So last week we began talking about the ideas in the book, Honoring Yourself, the Inner Art of Giving and Receiving. And this is part 2. It's all about embracing the power of paradox in your life. And it was written by Patricia Spadaro. And it's about the daily stresses that we have. Does anybody have daily stresses? And it's about balancing between giving and receiving. And sometimes that can seem like a tall order. Sometimes I think we feel like we're just giving, and not doing enough to honor ourselves. Well, today we're going to talk about the paradox between receiving, or I should say seeking support, and flying solo. And I put that on the yin and yang because that's really a paradox. And it's two halves that come together to make a whole. That you can't have one without the other. You need both, but you need a balance. And when thinking about the side of receiving support, many of us were brought up to believe that we have to do it all ourselves, right? I mean, in the Midwest, it's pull up your bootstraps and get going, girl. No support for you. You have to do it, and don't ask for help. And it can be difficult for those of us that have grown up with those myths and error beliefs to ask for support. I found this article on the internet. It's called Mistaken Beliefs About Asking for Help. And it's by Lori Corcure. And she does, I think, a really good job of describing the reasons we have a hard time asking for support. And she calls them the 5 assumptions. And number 1 is asking for support is a sign of weakness. You may know this one. You think to yourself, if I ask for support, they'll know that I can't do it on my own, or maybe that I don't have all the skills or knowledge to do it myself, right? And I don't want anybody to find out about it. So we have to realize that no one is perfect. Everyone has room to grow. And some of the greatest leaders of our time, Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Oprah, and even the Dalai Lama, what they did was they inspired people through their sharing of their failures and admitting that they didn't have all the answers. And they also were very grateful for those around them who supported them, and they let them know because they realized that they needed a village supporting them in order to succeed. Hey, if the Dalai Lama can do it, we can too, right? Maybe not, but we can. Assumption number 2 is allowing someone else to help me means I lose control of the situation. How many of us like to feel out of control? No hands. I imagine that very few of us do because it's scary and it feels uncomfortable, doesn't it, to be out of control? But sometimes the best we can do in these situations is to actually let go and trust someone to help us. And know that we can't control everything. There is a lot that we can control, but we can't control everything. And being perfect is one of them. We just can't be perfect, darn it. So in those less than perfect situations, let's encourage ourselves to ask for help. Take a baby step, ask. And when we ask for support, we trust others, and it builds camaraderie, it builds trust, it builds relationships between us and the people that support us. Assumption 3, if I receive support, then I have to reciprocate. I don't know, I like this one. In this situation, what you're doing is you're asking yourself, what if I can't return the favor? Or what if I don't want to return the favor, right? I remember my step-grandfather saying, I don't accept help from anyone because then I would owe them something. And he thought that by allowing others to help him, that he would become weak and he would actually have to pay for that support. It's sad, isn't it? I mean, and it's not true. When a person gives a gift, it is without expectation. Otherwise, guess what? It's really not a gift, right? And when a person gives with those expectations, they're probably going to end up angry, resentful, and they'll, and whose problem is it then, right? It's theirs. So when someone gives without expectations, it does come back to you. It always does. When you give, it comes back, because that's just the way flow is. Now, it might not come back in the exact same way that you gave. It might not come back from the same person that you gave to, but it always, always comes back. So you don't have to worry about whether it will be reciprocated or not, because that's just the way the law of giving and receiving works. Give it. Give generously. See what happens. Number 4, if I ask for the support of others, I am burdening them. This is me all the way, guys. I know people, and I get to talk to people all the time, so I really know how much they're going through and how much that they are doing for other people. So I hesitate all the time to ask for help. And yet, if I don't ask for help, I'm going to feel overwhelmed because I can't do everything myself. So I need to ask for help. And I have to trust that if a person is overburdened themselves, that they're going to say to me, I can't do this right now. Or, hey, what about if I do this? Will that help you? I've got to trust that that's going to happen. We have to trust this and believe that that's going to happen. And assumption 5, I am the only one that can do it. It's my way. I'm guilty of this too. I really am. I'll get busy and I'll say, it's just easier to do it myself. But I am really missing out. I'm missing out on allowing someone else to share their gifts, share their talents. And if I just had patience, maybe I could teach someone a skill that they could then take over, which would help me out in the long run, right? These error beliefs are crazy. But I'd like to, once you see them, then you can do something about it. And it stops the flow. When I don't allow people to give to me, it really, again, stops that flow of giving and receiving. So all those assumptions, they're all myths, they're all error beliefs, and something I think that we all have to work with. Not allowing others to support us does not make us weak, does not make us lose control, it doesn't burden others, and it does not make our life harder or more difficult. Seeking support is actually a sign of health and strength. I was talking to Reverend Mark when he came back from Unity Village about the topic of today's lesson, and he told me that in ministerial school, one of the things that they ask the students that are going through it are you able to recognize when you need support? And once you recognize it, are you able to put your ego aside and then ask for help? Because it's that important. That's a skill that is so important for them to know, and for all of us to know, not just them. And just think what would have happened if, go back one, Helen Keller did not get support from her faithful tutor, Anne Sullivan. Luke Skywalker did not have his teachers par excellence, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yogi. Ernest Hemingway's first boss at the newspaper he worked at didn't help him publish his first novel, which he did. Patti LaBelle is a music teacher. What if she didn't mentor her or been helpful to her family? Go back to that, please. If Stephen King's wife didn't drag his first book out of the trash and urge him to finish it. Did you guys know that?
No.
Yeah. And now he sold over 350 million copies of his book, plus countless other ones made into motion pictures. So, and then Maya Angelou's neighbor turned teacher had not encouraged her, if she hadn't encouraged her to read and took her to the library, because that's where she fell in love with poetry, what would have happened? We all need our support. And I'm sure that you can think of someone in your life that's been a teacher, a coach, a mentor, someone who has helped you become who you are today. There's strength in being vulnerable, there really is, and in being human. We were designed to co-create and co-create together. And lucky for us, we have this spiritual community here where we get to have support. We get to practice giving support and also receiving support. So think about how you might increase your asking of support, and go out and do it today in a small way, and then build up to bigger ways and see what happens. Experience that gift of giving support and receiving support. But we can't always depend on others, can we? Sometimes we do have to fly solo, which is the other half of the paradox. When do we fly solo? There is a acidic story in the book, Patricia's book, that shows why self-reliance is so important. A young rabbi complained to his mentor that he felt full of life when he was studying, but when he turned away from that source of support and went about his daily activities, this mood disappeared. So he asked the rabbi, he said, "What should I do?" And the rabbi said, "You must be like the man who is walking through the forest in the dark, accompanied by a friend. A time will come when the two companions will need to part and go their own way, and neither will fear the darkness if they have their own lantern." So we must depend on ourselves to move forward and have a healthy, productive life. I remember when my son and daughter-in-law had their second child. They already had a 1-year-old child, but now they have their second child. And my son was working, but he didn't make very much money at all. And my daughter-in-law, her mother, let them live in their converted garage. So they barely had enough money to eat or to do much of anything. So I picked up the rest. I supported them. And after a time, I began to feel resentful. No doubt, no wonder, right? And I understood that, through my coach, my therapist, that my sacrificing like that was not the healthiest for me or for them, and I needed to stop. And when I stopped, I felt a lot of pain and just pulling at my heartstrings about it, and it really hurt. And they also got mad at me. So, but you know what? I got over my pain, and they got over their anger, and they went on to live their life. And I'm happy to announce that everyone is still alive. No one's hungry, and they have a home, and they've survived. And now they have the skills and the knowledge and the know-how how to live life without depending on someone else. They know how to take care of themselves and fly solo, and I do too. Patricia says it best in her book. If we don't allow ourselves to exercise our own inner muscles, our own minds, our own hearts, they will atrophy. That's why we must fly solo at some times. The Buddha tells great stories, and he told a story about a bamboo acrobat. The acrobat who performed feats atop a bamboo pole took on an apprentice. The teacher instructed the young pupil to climb the pole and stand on his shoulders, saying, you look after me and I will look after you. By watching over each other in this way, we will be safe, we'll make a good profit, and be able to come down from the pole safely. Well, the pupil disagreed. He said, no, master, you must look after yourself, and I must look after myself. By each of us protecting ourselves, we'll be able to do our feats, make a good profit, and come down from the pole safely. So who was correct, the master or the apprentice? Well, the Buddha explained that the apprentice really had the right idea. Then he uttered one of the paradoxes that is at the very heart of this idea of giving and receiving. Protecting oneself, one protects the others. Protecting others, one protects oneself. It's like one of those Buddhist koans, right? Two complementary truths with profound implications. And as this paradox shows, by protecting yourself, by first caring for yourself and filling your inner needs, you garner the strength to help others. And on the other hand, when you support others and treat them with loving kindness, you are protecting yourself by creating the kind of world that you want to live in. I love that. It's really a win-win situation. Sometimes we need to fly solo, and sometimes we need to be supported. The first thing in knowing which way to go is to be able to recognize it. That's the hardest part, I think, is recognizing it. I think having some tips or some guidelines can really help. So I wanted to share with you the questions from Patricia's book that I think will help us determine when it's time to seek help and when it's time to fly solo. Asking yourself, is there an area of your life where you're trying to make progress on your own but feel stuck? I mean, what kind of support do you need? Mental, physical, spiritual, emotional? Which one? And what step can you take right now to seek support, guidance, or advice in an area where you feel stuck? The next question, do you tend to tackle all of life's challenges by yourself? I do. Remember, seeking support is the loving and strong thing to do. You are honoring yourself. People are more willing to help than you think. I get this. Are you in a personal or business relationship with someone who is making decisions that you should be making? I think this is kind of one of those gray areas. But if you do find you're in this situation, tell them how you feel. Write it out so that you can really fully express yourself and say, you know, I have the strengths and talents and I want to show them here. And the last one, are there spaces in your togetherness? That kind of reminds me of the poem The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Have you given up being yourself? Are you feeling irritated with the other? Do you have your own hobbies? Dedicate time apart. And of course, by doing that, your relationship is going to be better. Today's lesson is all about seeing both sides of the paradox between seeking support and flying solo. So I hope it helped you in identifying the value of both asking for support and also flying solo. And I hope you picked up some tips. They're in your handout, in your bulletin, so you don't have to remember all this. And I hope you do. I hope you do use these and bring yourself back into balance for a happy, healthier life. And may you live with paradoxes in your life in a very healthy and whole way. So, thank you.